we've been talking about ethics for the last couple of weeks in a very simple way. Ethics being that of thought, action, intention that is aligned with non-harm. And coming at it not from a moralistic standpoint, because it's the right thing to do, or because we're a better person, or we need to become a certain way, but really from the mindfulness perspective, if what we're trying to do is cultivate more awareness, which is another way we can use the word mindfulness, or more connection in our lives with our experiences to each other, towards ourselves. Thought patterns lead to actions, and if those have an orientation that are harmful, create a residue of emotions and thought patterns that become distractions. And these distractions get in the way of us having clarity or awareness. And so, on the theme of non-harm, I wanted to talk a little bit about today about transgression. And what I mean by transgression is the breaking certain boundaries. And these boundaries being a protective limit that we have for ourselves, or a protective limit that others might have to be able to keep ourselves feeling safe and self-connected and aligned. And I love some of the reports that I just heard out, because I was hearing, I wanted to go to sleep, but I was, maybe this wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, or I didn't want to miss something, or this is something that I often hear, that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm pretty sure it's not what's supposed to be happening. And this is almost like an insidious chronic state that I think we have playing in the background, that somehow something is supposed to be happening and we're responsible for it. We're not really sure what, and there's this pressure, and whatever the outcome is or what's happening is not it. So there's this perpetual state of dissatisfaction and also helplessness, being a victim of external circumstances. And so the classic that I like to think about is, I remember oftentimes when I would go on retreat and would be in these meditation halls, the agreement would be, because these were in Buddhist centers, that you'd be closing your eyes or not making eye contact with others. And there would be moments where I would feel really, really tired. And the movement inside of me was to open my eyes, because there was something that was stabilizing about having my eyes open, that if I had my eyes closed, I would either get completely lost in thought and unable to really feel my body, or I would just lapse into exhaustion and fall asleep. And so the body was already giving me a natural signal of what's wanted, what's needed, which is more light coming through my eyes, or maybe just being able to pull out of the warp of the story that was going on in my thoughts. But because I was giving an external source the authority to define for me what was correct or not correct, I was creating a transgression against myself. meaning that instead of following the natural wisdom of what was wanted in the moment, which is what my body was informing me of, because I was attached to this idea that there is this other way that's not my way, that is the right way, and that's what I need to do, I was ignoring a boundary or a signal that was coming from my body that would promote more well-being and relaxation. We do this all the time. And these are micro transgressions that happen. They might happen as a result of a culturalization. I'm making up words, the culture that we are brought up in, right? That there's a particular norm of how to behave depending on your gender, depending on your age, depending on, your status, and that we follow these at the cost of following what is the most correct action within ourselves. I had a parent call today where mother and student were on a conference asking me if I would be willing to support them in claiming that this student had ADHD. And we had a really lengthy conversation about what exactly the student was going through, which the feedback was, oh, I'm feeling a lot of resistance and I'm feeling a lot of distraction around doing the schoolwork. Like I'm trying to do it, but I just can't do it. And so there's something wrong with me. And so because there's something wrong with me, we need to fix this. And so we want to get medical treatment and we want to find a way to still navigate the system. And it became very difficult for me to stay neutral in this conversation. I wanted to support them, but I wasn't sure if that would be of service to them. And I find this that happens more and more with our younger generations, but I also think it's pervasive in us as adults, is that if we are not like the average external circumstance, the group that we belong to, whether that's family, whether that's with our peers, whether that's, whatever, our coworkers, then the automatic assumption is that there's something wrong with us. Meaning that there isn't this listening in and taking the feedback that the body is offering. If the feedback is fatigue, if the feedback is lack of interest or engagement, that's information. It's not a problem. And so what happens is we skip over that and we go into the story. And the story is something is wrong. And the conditioning or the habit that kicks in is if something is wrong, then we need to fix it. And so we completely skip over what's actually happening. And we go into a series of actions that are generated from a place of activated nervous system, meaning there's little availability to start off with when we're in that state, which means that most of the actions that are going to be generated, there might be a good chance that they're not actually going to serve our well-being because we weren't available or present enough to get the information that that we need to be able to discern for ourselves what would be the most appropriate thing in that moment. And so one of the things that can become a part of our practice with mindfulness is to start tracking what's actually happening and what is our response to any moments where there might be a slight incongruency between what our experience is and what the expectation is for that experience. So that if there's a set of behavioral norms and I am not following those, to let that be a flag for me to observe and notice what is my habituated reaction to that. Do I accommodate? Do I defend and justify? Do I self-sacrifice? Do I just shut down and disassociate? Because these are critical moments. These are moments in which we are being asked to choose between ourselves and listening to our way, or forfeiting that agency, that sovereignty, and going along with something else that's not in alignment with what matters most to us. And over time, this can become so habitual as a pattern that we start to lose connection with what we were to start off with, or what we wanted from the beginning. This is a form of ethics, of following a way that leads to less harm. Because if I'm self-sacrificing, it doesn't come just at a cost to me. It also comes at a cost to whatever relationship that's happening in, or whatever context. So to give a really specific example, if I'm being asked at work to do something that is above my capacity and I accept, for whatever reasons, there's no judgment on what the reasons are, they're innocent. We want to contribute. We don't want to let the team down. Or maybe we're afraid of what will happen if we say no. But if there's a self-sacrifice in there, the quality of the work that's going to be delivered will not be something that is sustainable, nor completely honest. And so we come back to that ethical principle of honesty as well. That if we're doing something that is inauthentic to what we are really wanting to be doing, it will be picked up by others, the incongruence. There's a felt residue sense to that. And also, whatever it is, the action that we're doing will eventually come at a cost to that other person or within that context, meaning there will be resentment that builds on my side. There will be certain things that I do that might not be coming from a place of sincerity and goodwill. And so how do we navigate all of this? We navigate this just by paying attention. It's almost like it's the answer for all of the mindfulness points of views that I'm coming at. We bring interest into what's happening. Why is this happening? What's actually happening? What's the impact? These transgressions can be easily seen, I think, more in relationship than when we're just talking about ourselves. Because when there's a transgression in relationship to another person, that person will give feedback. If there's a boundary violation, even if it's subtle, it could be something as innocent as wanting to help someone and offer them help, or maybe even something as simple as unsolicited advice. There is a transgression that might be happening if there was not consent or permission for that to happen. And oftentimes this is not something that's fully at conscious level. So if I'm having a really bad day and I go to my friend and I'm wanting empathy and I'm talking about my bad day and I'm wanting to be heard, and immediately that person starts advising me or putting on their idea over my experience of how I should have handled that, that feels like a transgression. It might be innocent coming from the other person, but the impact on me is a tightening up, maybe a shutting down, a feeling of disconnection. Maybe it's irritation. So we have these ways of getting feedback about whether a transgression is happening or not, and whether that's within ourselves or whether that's in relationship to other people. Emotions give us that feedback. Anger oftentimes comes as a result of a transgression, a boundary violation. There's a myriad of other emotions that might come up as a result, also depending on whatever context it happens to be. The body will give us feedback as well. When there's a transgression, there is generally a contraction. There's a contraction or a tightness that happens. It's no longer feeling relaxed, safe, open, available. There's a defensiveness. And so when we are working or when we are relating with other people, what we can do, because oftentimes we don't know what our impact is on other people, is to track what's physically happening for that other person. And can I pick up what is the emotional response by the tone of their voice or their body posture or even the words that they're using? Because it's impossible for us to know what's going to be a transgression for another person sometimes, because we can't know what their reality is in that moment or what they're needing. And so in a sense, just us navigating without paying attention can lead to a transgression. And so the ethics is to bring attention to what we're doing and track the impact. And if we're not sure, we approach it slowly to see what is the impact on the other, because oftentimes they might not even know. I do this oftentimes in speech, and I'll use communication as an example since we were going to go in that direction this week, is that a lot of times the way I approach, let's say a coworker, is because I'm wanting something. I'm needing something. And so I'm already coming with an agenda. And I want, when I leave that interaction, to get what I came to get. So that's a transgression to start off with, right? It's just this expectation. I'm going to go do something. It's this transaction that's going to happen. I'm going to get something out of it. It's a transgression if I'm not aware of their willingness to be able to offer that. So let me backtrack a little bit. It's not just a transgression having an agenda, but not being transparent about what that is and not being open to the other person if they don't want to participate, that it's okay for that to be the truth. When I become fixated on my way, there's a good chance that a transgression is going to happen. And so the approach to that would be that of very gentle contact to even see if the person is in the mood to interact. We have this automatic assumption that if we speak, somebody should listen. And maybe when I'm approaching someone, they don't want to talk to anyone. They don't want contact. So even that can be a transgression. So me approaching slowly and seeing their body posture and seeing if they make eye contact, if there's enthusiasm with that eye contact, or if there is looking down or away. We can do that even as you're coming into a room. You can gauge, how's the other feeling about this? I can use proximity and to start seeing, do they come towards, they stay where they are, maybe they don't know, and start moving away. Right? So we have all of these physical cues that can give hints. And this is in particular really important when we're engaging with somebody that might have the conditioning of not feeling comfortable saying a no. That they might be acting like they're engaged in it, but inside they're not wanting the interaction. And so, of course, it's the responsibility of the person to communicate that and set the boundary, but not everybody has that awareness in that moment. And as we are cultivating mindfulness, or if we have more awareness from an ethical standpoint, it's our responsibility to be able to gauge that. Not because it's the right thing to do again, but so that we don't generate something that is not true or honest as a result of this interaction, which leads to a story that's not in alignment with what's actually happening. If we take it slow, it allows the other person to register and take in what's actually happening. And it gives them time and space to digest so that they can know what their capacity is and what they're wanting. So it's almost like I think of it like when I watch birds courting. You know, the two birds kind of look at each other and they find each other and they start to slowly approach, but they're not really sure, you know, is this some kind of territorial predator relationship? Like, am I wanting to get closer to that or not? And then you'll have one that might get closer to the other and the other one kind of backs off, you know? And in order for there to be a harmonious union, it's really that navigating of that pulling away and coming towards. And it's not perfect, it's messy. But eventually, what allows there to be the right match is the attunement to what the other is experiencing and wanting. With mindfulness, what we are doing is we are attuning to what's happening inside of us and to what's happening outside. And when we're moving into action, we're doing it in a way where there's congruency between the two. When there is a lack of congruency, that is where dis-ease starts to happen, doubt, sometimes conflict. And so, as part of the ethics of non-harm, if we put our attention into really noticing what's going on and checking in with the appropriateness of an action we want to take, and taking small actions and waiting to see how it lands on ourselves, on the other, or in the circumstance that we're in. Letting the body and the emotional field give us a feedback as to whether we should proceed, stop and wait, or step back. This process of attunement is what allows us to navigate in a way that is harmonious. And in being in a way that is harmonious, meaning it does not generate harm for ourselves or for others, there is a safety and there is a relaxation that happens that are the conditions for giving us access to ourselves and to what's really happening around us. And from that place comes wise action. From that place comes the ability to connect. From that place comes presence.